Hey everybody, Captain B-Nard back here with the Captain's Recap for Week 6 of the Battle Hub Draft League Season 4. So we're going to be talking about all the Week 6 action here. As well, we are going to take a look at the updated standings post-Week 6. And here to discuss all of that with me, we have a very special guest, none other than the Pokemaster himself, Chris, also known as Pokemaster88 from the Discord server. So, welcome aboard.
What's good, everybody? Thanks for having me, B-Nard.
Yeah, no problem,
Glad
man.
to be here.
Yep, glad to have you here. Definitely interested to hear your insight as a pretty seasoned Pokemon player. Interested to hear your thoughts on all of these Week 6 matchups here, and definitely bring a different perspective here to the Captain's Recap for all these games. So, yeah, should be a good time.
Yeah, let's get right into it. I'm really happy to be here. Really excited to go over some of these games. Yeah.
That pretty well covers it. All right, so without further ado, we will go ahead and jump into our first Week 6 match here. And that is actually going to be my match as I lead the Philadelphia Pidgeys into battle here this week against Arcaniner and his West Texas Arcanines. So, looking at these teams on paper, obviously on Arcaniner's side, he's got stuff like the Latias, the Weavile, the Donphan, the Entei, a lot of bulky offense on this team as well. He's got the Terra Captains, Inteleon, and Electros, obviously very potent with Inteleon, those Terra Water, high critical hit boosted attacks. Then, of course, we also have the Lucario and the Serperior to contend with as well. Looking at my team, of course, very familiar for you guys here. Of course, we have the Sneasler and the Indeedee Unburdened combo there. Of course, we have the Terra Captains Gudra and Mudsdale. We have that larger defensive core on the team with Scissor and Rotom Wash. And then we've got great utility with the Grimmsnarl. And then some more power with the Hisuian Arcanine and the Azelf. So when I look at these two teams on paper, and obviously one of them is my team, so I'll give you guys a little bit of an insight into what I was thinking going into this match. Um, I honestly thought that Sneasler had a huge opportunity to go nuts in this game with the Unburdened set because looking at Arcaniner's team, he really doesn't have much of anything to answer a Sneasler. If I can get it in and set up with a Swords Dance and an Unburden, there's really not much of anything he has to answer that. Maybe fully defensive Donphan or Electros if he's able to keep them healthy. But other than that, he really doesn't have much. So I thought Unburdened Sneasler would be great in this match. But conversely, on his side, I was a little bit worried about the Entei because I thought Entei actually had a really strong matchup into my team. Um, but what did you think about this matchup on paper here, Chris?
On paper, I thought your team really had a lot of good ways to answer his physical threats because Inte, I feel like Mudsdale is a pretty good switch in. I think Mudsdale is a pretty good answer to Donphan because you just raise your stamina boost,
Yep,
and I think over time you probably would win that 1v1.
yep,
Um, I thought Grimmsnarl was a really good answer to Latias because we
absolutely.
all know Arcaniner loves his setup Latias.
Yep,
And then I also thought Rodon was going to be a pretty key factor in helping with Donphan, Weavile, and Entei.
yep.
And yeah, I think
Sounds
like
like you're kind of saying the same thing. Overall, it just seemed like I had the really solid matchup on paper.
yeah, on paper I definitely gave you the edge here. I definitely
Absolutely.
did give you the edge.
Yep, I agree with that
Um,
100%. Um, so, when we look at the actual game results here, we will see that it was, in fact, me that did end up taking the win in this game. It was only a 1-0, though. It was a very close game here. It was a really good game, honestly. I thought. I feel like the way that I played this game was kind of like a roller coaster, to be honest with you. So, my big takeaway from this game is that I feel like I started off playing this game very strong. Like the early to mid game, I think that I was just making the predictions, I was making the right calls. My sets that I brought were really popping off. Like you said, Grimmsnarl was a total wall for Latias. Mudsdale put in work early game as well. Toward the end of the game, I should say before I say this, I would say I think at one point I was leading like 6-3. I want to say against Arcane Iron in this game. Um, so I was really off to a hell of a start in this game. But somewhere toward
You were.
but somewhere toward like the mid to closer to the end of the game, I feel like I really dropped the ball and I made some kind of bad plays that got me in a little bit of trouble. So, one of which I would call out was specifically the turn that I had the Grimmsnarl in versus his Latias, and so the Latias is levitating, which I believe means that the psychic terrain was up as well. And I believe for Pokemon that are either levitating or flying, the psychic terrain does not affect them. So you can hit them with priority moves, which comes into play because Grimmsnarl has Prankster, of course. Um, but he goes ahead and switches into the Entei, which I should have foreseen. And I tried to Prankster parting shot pivot, and obviously that didn't work. And then I end up losing Grimmsnarl the next turn to an attack. So that was definitely a big miscalculation on my side. But additionally, a couple turns later, this was where the game really took a 180 for me because the Entei really closed the gap on me in a serious way because it was able to take out the Grimmsnarl. It also ended up taking out my Rotom. I made kind of a bad play because I wasn't counting the psychic terrain turns, and what I wanted to have Indeedee in on the psychic terrain so that I could finish off the Entei, but unfortunately, I didn't count the psychic turns properly, so I ended up having Entei or Indeedee in against the Entei. The turn the psychic terrain expired, so I was worried about if I would stay in and try to take the Entei out, and if he's either choice Scarf, he would outspeed me, or if the attack isn't enough to take him out, then I lose the Indeedee, and if Psychic Terrain's down, I lose the game essentially at that point. So I ended up having to like sack Rotom to get Entei back in. I also actually forgot that Rotom had been knocked off earlier in the game, which is why I didn't go Hydro Pump on the Entei the turn before. I went Volt Switch instead. So yeah, I feel like I really toward the end of the game I kind of dropped the ball and made a bunch of misplays that really closed the gap. And at one point, I was actually a little bit nervous about losing the game. Like I felt like I was in pretty much total control of the game for the first, very large amount of the game here. We both played pretty well, I thought, but I really felt in control. And then, like I said, toward those closing turns, I felt like I really dropped the ball. Now, luckily enough for me, it wasn't enough to cost me the game, but it was able enough for him to really close the gap, as I was able to close the game out with Sneasler at the end. But I'd love to get your thoughts on the game.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I did notice you did forget or mistime the psychic terrain turns, and you did have to sack a couple things. And Inte was able to, narrow the gap a tiny bit. And an Inteleon was looking pretty good late game, but you honestly weathered the storm, and you got into a position where you kind of were just cleaning up the last few months. I forgot who we had left. Right, it was I can't remember. It was like
So
in where you did was Indeedee
yes, yeah. So
were you,
Scarf and Didi was able to catch the Inteleon and take it out, which was a big moment for me, and that was like right before things started to go downhill with the Entei. But yeah, that was a big moment for me. Um, and then also having the Scarf and Didi allowed me to get rid of the Entei a few turns later. But like I said, I'd have to sack a couple things to the Entei, which kind of sucked.
because
But yeah, the
I
Scarf and
remember
Didi put work in.
yeah, I remember there was like a point where it was Indeedee versus Latias, and you were just chipping it and chipping it and chipping it.
Yep. That was it right at the end,
Um,
the last couple of turns there when it was down to Ndidi versus It was down to Ndidi and Sneasler versus Latias, and I was just thinking to myself, I was glad that it seemed like he didn't have Recover on deck with the Latias, because if he would have been at that point, if he would have been able to like Recover stall the Indeedee till the Psychic Terrain ran out, I could have been in serious trouble, because I was actually not fully speed invested on the Sneasler because I was counting on the Unburdened speed boost. So hypothetically, if the Psychic Terrain would have ran out at the end of that game before I would have been able to bring Sneasler in, I actually could have lost that game. Um, Due to my own performance and nothing else. But thankfully that wasn't the case. He didn't have that on deck. But yeah, indeed he was able to chip Latias down enough that Sneasler could easily just come in and finish it off. But
because I thought Grimmsnarl and Gudra did an amazing job of getting momentum, getting the poison off, chipping the team early.
absolutely,
Ndidi and Sneasler can come in and kind of just clean the game up. I thought Muzdale was really solid. You did make a really risky play, but a great play. You left Muzdale in on Electros to get your rocks up,
yep.
and I think that also paid off for you.
Yeah, it did, because I knew there was going to be a lot of switching in this game, so I didn't want to take that much chip on Mudsdale because I knew it was my best Entei counter, but at the same time I felt like it was worth it because he was pivoting so much early game, and that's kind of having the rocks up. I think because I put them up once, he spun them away with Don Fan, and then I was able to get them up again, at the cost of getting Mudsdale extremely chipped. But still getting the rocks up the second time after the Don Fan was down was huge for me because like I said, with all the pivoting we were both doing, he was taking a lot of chip from those rocks. So yeah, that was a big factor.
And then I noticed a crazy play on Arcanine side. I think he switched Superior in on a Draco. Now I'm not sure he was stacking it or he just knows like, okay, he can have Stab Saber. I probably can't touch this thing, so let me
Yeah,
just stack the Superior. I'm
I
not
feel
just
like that's
sure.
I feel like that's probably what it was, honestly, because when he did that, I remember that turn, and I was just thinking, I was actually kind of surprised he brought the Superior to the game, because Gudra just completely walls, not even if it's not Sapsip or Gudra, it just completely
Right.
walls non a Superior that cannot Terra, because Superior's move pool is very shallow aside from like grass and normal moves, I think. So yeah, I was actually pretty happy to see the Superior, and it didn't really play too much of a factor in the game. But um, but yeah, I think
Yeah.
overall it was a pretty solid game. Like I said, I feel like I definitely could have played it better. But I'm just happy that my mistakes that I made in the late game didn't cost me the actual win. So I'm just happy about that. But
Yeah, I mean, you did pretty good, and Inteleon, like I said, did all they could to keep Arcanine in the game. Entei
yep,
was a threat with Inteleon. They were really hitting things kind of hard.
yeah,
But I mean, down the stretch, Indeedee and Sneasler were just incredibly strong and really hard to pick off near the end because you had your Psychic Terrain up, you had your Psychic Seed, your Sneasler was healthy.
yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I think the way that I would sum this game up is I played well enough in the early to mid game that I could have I was able to play bad in the late game and still win. That's kind of the way I look at this game. Um, but yeah,
And then,
definitely solid game. So
yeah, I think you guys both overall played really well. The prep was really solid. I
hmm
think overall, another win for the Pidgeys.
yes,
It's
definitely
another.
fair enough. All right, so we'll move on from this game then, and that is going to bring us to the game of Abomination and the Athabasca Miltanks taking on the notorious HIM and the Brooklyn Baxcaliburs. So, looking at this game on paper, on Abomination's side, you've got obviously the very bulky offensive team that he has with the Great Tusk, and then of course the Dragon Fairy Steel Core, the Clefable, the Dragonite, the Heat Ran. He's got those Terra Captains, Jolteon and Vileplume are great. Um, he's also got the Suicune, the Reuniclus, just a lot of good stuff on this team here. One of the higher up teams in the league. But then again, looking at HIM's team, he's got some great stuff there too. He's got the Bax Caliber with the Galarian Slowking combo, of course, very, very potent. He's got the Excadrill, the Garganackle, good bulk. Terra Captains, Typhlosion, Quagsire, Doxbun, as I've stated many times, and I'll state it again. What I felt was the best Terra Captain loadout in the league here. Then he's also got the Tornadus and the Blastoise, Tornadus, or I should say Thundurus, sorry, Thundurus Therian and the Blastoise, not to be taken lightly either. So, looking at this matchup on paper, I kind of feel like this matchup is pretty even, to be honest with you. I feel like these teams are both pretty evenly matched because they both have really solid attackers. They have really solid defensive cores for the most part. Um, just I feel like these teams are pretty evenly matched. I'll just say that. But how do you feel about these teams on paper?
Absolutely. I thought the matchup was pretty even. I thought they had really good answers to each other's top threats. A
Yep.
lot of valid switch-ins. Um, I thought the speed here definitely favored Al a bit, but I think on
Yeah.
paper the matchup was dead even.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
And
So, but looking at the actual game result here, we will see that it actually was the notorious HIM that won this game 1-0. This was a really, really solid game. Another really tight one here, down to the wire. Um, Absolute war between these two coaches. There were a couple things in this match that I thought, like I said, I think it was a really good game overall. I thought both coaches played pretty well, although I think one of the things that set Abomination back was the turn one kind of sort of misplay with the Chinchino, where he basically just suicides the Chinchino into the Rocky Helmet Excadrill,
yeah,
which, that was, I mean, granted, like, he saw his opportunity and he tried to, or what he thought was his opportunity and tried to take it. I give him respect for that, but I think it was definitely an unnecessarily reckless play on his part when he knew full well that, as he even stated in his own video, he knew full well that the Rocky Helmet is like the best counter to those normal types with the multi-strike moves like the Chinchino and the Mouse Hold and that kind of stuff. So, um, definitely an unnecessarily reckless play on his side to start the game, I think. But additionally, I think the big elephant in the room when it comes to this game is, my God, the crits. My God, the
there
crits
was
in this
so
game,
many.
and there was so many crit, and actually that's going to be a reoccurring theme this week, I think, because there were so many crits in so many of these games this week. It was pretty absurd, honestly. Um, but specifically in this game, there was, I think, what, like three or four crits in this game, and they all mattered. But because usually, like
Yeah,
yeah, because usually sometimes you get the crit and it's like, oh well, it didn't matter because it was had like 1 HP or whatever. But no, I think every single crit in this game mattered, and the big one, obviously, that we have to talk about, the big, big, big one, was the fact that Abomination had brought a stored power Reuniclus set, and that thing was set up 6 ways from Sunday. I think it had like +3 special attack, +3
yeah,
special defense, and like +4 physical defense. So like there ain't no way in hell that thing's dying. Like none whatsoever that thing is gonna die. There's no, unless you have like unaware choice specs something or choice band unaware something, I don't know, but there was no way that thing was dying. And then on the last turn where he faces down Typhlosion, which is on 1 HP because it had substituted itself all the way down to like 1 HP. Um, he goes ahead and gets critted by the Typhlosion and loses the Reuniclus, which I will go out on a limb here and I will say I think if not for that crit, then Abomination would have won this game. Now, again, that would be provided that because I think HIM still had like another two or three Pokemon left at that point. besides Typhlosion. So he would have, like, provided nothing else, would have crit Reuniclus. Like, literally the only way Abomination loses that game in that situation is if something crits Reuniclus and takes it down, right? So, because there's just with, I don't think he had anything to like phase it out or like encore it or lock it in or anything like that. So I think, yeah, the crit, a crit was literally the only way that that thing was going down, and he got it. So so that was
Yeah, he
go ahead.
he really did get it. Like, he kind of brought it in on the Slow King, which is a very passive mon. Started setting up the Iron Defenses, the Calm Minds, and then by the time Typhlosion came in, it really wasn't much it could be done.
Yeah.
And I think when HIM started subbing, I think it kind of aided in the Rhea Nicholas setting up further.
Yep.
And now, he did miss two Fire Blast miss, but at that point, it really didn't
Yeah, I
matter.
think he did miss the fire blasts. I believe he did have recover on that set too. So I think if anything, I think the fire blast misses, I should say, which was very unfortunate on HIM side. But the misses at that point, I think, just kind of made everything quicker, because I feel like if he would have connected with those fire blasts, provided they weren't crits, that would have just kind of forced Abomination to like recover rather than set up further, and it just kind of would have wasted more time, I think. But again, it could have been a crit, it could have been a high roll. We
And
don't know how much damage it would have been doing at that point without the special defense boosts. Um, but yeah, definitely fair point there. Those misses surely allowed that Reuniclus to set up as well as it did. But yeah, so that was
but looking at
devastating.
the matches,
Yeah,
no, it was, and like I just felt like on paper, like this set was very good into HIM's team.
yeah.
Maybe like a trick Slow King or something to kind of like slow this down a little bit would have been nice, but without those kinds of options, encore, anything like that, this mind kind of just runs away with the game.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the other thing is that whole thing happens, right? Like that whole thing plays out. I do want to mention, though, I have to say this. I think Abomination screwed himself, because he, in the moments, if you watch that game, in the moments before he gets crit, he's like, please do, he's begging Typhlosion not to crit him, and he says, Typhlosion, and I quote, Typhlosion, you don't deserve to crit me. And that, at that point, at that point, it was over, because he jinxed himself, he sealed his own fate, and it happened. But if that wasn't bad enough, later in the game, toward the closing moments of the game, what was it? I think it was Heatran actually got crit by, what did he get crit by? I can't even remember now. It was Blastoise, a surf from Blastoise or something. I can't remember exact, or maybe from.
Yeah, it might have been like a surf or, but yeah, Heatran took unnecessary damage. I
Yep.
think it was from Blastoise.
Yeah, I
It
don't
was. It
remember
wasn't. It
who.
didn't take that.
Right. So I don't remember who. I think that happened, or something crit heat ran. I remember that. I can't remember exactly what Pokemon it was, but something crit heat ran to the point that it took so much chip that it couldn't live, when it where it couldn't live long enough to be around to get rid of the Galarian Slow King, and that was where the game was really over. And even, it's funny, because even with all those crits and all that hacks, it was still a 1-0 victory. So absolutely insane. I think this game, if you guys remember back to, I can't remember what week it was. It might have been week 2, I think, with Emerald versus Anna, and that game was like littered with hacks. I think this game gives that game a run for its money. I feel like that game probably still had more hacks in it than this game, but this game certainly is a close second, I think, to most hacky game of the season. But yeah, other than that, I thought the coaches played well enough, prepped well enough. But just sometimes when you get into these games in these situations, it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just no, like, hacks, like well-timed hacks will determine the game at some points, and it's unfortunate,
Because in
but
this,
yeah,
because that was the only way Al could lose was to a crit. That's the only way. Because that Rhea Nicholas, like you said, was set up 2 weeks from Sunday. It was over.
yeah, yeah. It's I guess that is the game we play, though, sometimes, unfortunately. Well, unfortunately
But
for him, but
Al was a great sport about it. He took it on the chin.
Yeah,
Talked about the team afterwards, moved on. So very, very commendable.
definitely, absolutely. So, but speaking of moving on, that is going to bring us to our next match here, which is actually going to be your match here as Pokemaster88 and the California Trailblazers take on the reigning BHDL champion Anastasia and Team Aquamarine. So, um, looking at this match on paper on your side, obviously you've got the big threats like the Meowscarada, the Iron Moth, defensive stuff like the Skarmory, the Hitmontop. Swampert is good bulky offense. Obviously the Hitmontop also a Terra Captain alongside that Alolan Raichu. And then you got the mini electric terrain strategy on the team with the Iron Moth, the Alolan Raichu, and the Pincurchin. Pincurchin has not made many appearances, as I know I've been told how you feel about that Pokemon, but that's okay. And we've also got
It's true.
yes, we've also got really bulky powerhouses like the Florges, and then Hydreigon is always a threat as well. And then on Anna's side, of course, she's got that really solid Dragon Fairy Steel Core right off the cuff with the Dragapult Primarina Corviknight. Obviously, the Ogerpon Hearthflame is a powerhouse, and the Ukidoogie can be very powerful offensively and/or defensively. Of course, the Incineroar, same thing, and Terra Captains Galarian Articuno and Bellibolt are very solid as well. So, when I look at this matchup on paper, I do actually kind of feel like you have the advantage a little bit in this match for a couple of reasons. One is the Meowscarada, I feel like, has great coverage against most of her team, specifically some of her high premier Pokemon like the Dragapult and the Primarina, obviously, and Galarian Articuno as well. Also gets fighting moves for the Incineroar. So Meowscarada seems like it has a good time in this match. Iron Moth seems like it has a good time in this match as well, coverage wise. Um, but yeah, this is your game, obviously. So give me your insights into what you were thinking going into this one.
Well, going into this match, I realized if I don't have the right lead for Ogerpon, it can just hit me really hard with Ivy Cudgel and was it Hornleech?
Yeah,
And so I told myself if I saw Ogerpon at the team preview, Skarmory is always the lead because maybe she goes for an Ivy Cudgel. I can really, really chip it, and then it's not as threatening to me. And then also Dragapult. I'm surprised I didn't see a dragon dancing Dragapult because that set obliterated my team, especially if we had like a fire coverage.
yeah,
And I felt like Primarina wasn't gonna come here because I have 3 months I can really take care of Primarina. I was really shocked to see the Ogie Dogie, not the Ogie Dogie, but the combination of Ogerpon and Incineroar together.
yep,
And Incineroar and Ogie Dogie was the prime reason why I didn't bring Meow because it's so tough to like. Yeah, I can U-turn right,
yeah.
but while both of those Pokemon are around, it's very very hard for me to
Break
gain
through.
progress.
Yeah,
So
fair points.
and learning from Anna's previous battles, she likes to use Soak on Bellibolt. So I was like, okay, I need to figure out a way around Soak because it does threaten Swapper. So I did go with the Assault Vest, and as long as I'm healthy enough, I can take a Terrablast Grass.
Yeah,
But it was really mainly for the Parabolic Charge, and if I ever got stuck in a Soak cycle, I was just gonna U-turn, flip turn between Hydreigon and Swampert to kind of figure out what the Bellibolt was trying to do.
gotcha. Fair enough. So, when we look at the actual match results here, we will see that it was in fact you that did take the win in this one, 3-0. Now, disclaimer, we'll kind of explain the situation because there was a little bit of a unique situation surrounding this game. But technically, you are going to be recorded as taking a 3-0 victory via forfeit. Reason for that is because you guys had your game, and you guys kind of got down to the wire toward the end of the game. And I guess for one reason or another, Anna kind of lost the will to continue in the match toward the very end of the game. Kind of saw the writing on the wall that it didn't seem like there was any way that she could win the game, and went ahead and forfeited the game right at the end. So um, we did take a look at the footage, courtesy of you, in the game, and we do think, while we were watching the footage, we do think it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that you were going to win at that point. We can't say for sure exactly how the end of the match would have played out, because we don't know like full spreads and like what kind of damage rolls would have happened and possibility of crits and all that kind of stuff. Um, so
Right,
that's
right.
so that's just kind of ended up being the decision we came to here, which is why we usually please ask all of the coaches to please not prematurely forfeit a game just for accuracy's sake. Um, but in any event, like I said, this is your game. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it since because it is technically recorded as a forfeit victory. None of the stats for the Pokemon really get entered, and nothing like that really happens. So, but yeah, if
Right.
there's anything about the match that you would like to say about your game here, please, the floor is yours.
Um, I think I played the match very, very well. I thought, even though I wasn't the most happy with what I brought, because these are things that I've brought in before, right? And I
Yeah,
thought, since I'm playing Anna, these are kind of some basic things that I've been kind of known to run, right?
right.
But then I was kind of, during the team building process, I was kind of like, well, it kind of works, right? So I'm thinking, well, it's obvious, and then she could read it,
Yeah,
but I was at a point where like either works or it doesn't work. So by the time match time started, and then like I saw Ogerpon, I was like, okay, Skarmory has to be the lead, and I felt like once Ogerpon went down, things just got a little bit easier because once I figured out what the belly bolt set was, it wasn't soaking or anything like that. I was able just to keep bringing in Swampert and kind of flip turning out to see I can get this thing to Terra, because once I figured out what the Terra is, I can really, really do damage to this Mon.
yeah,
And yeah, I think Anna played pretty well, right? I think she played pretty good. I just think it wasn't one of her best games, right?
yeah.
But yeah, I just probably would have finished out the I definitely wish she would have finished out the game. But other
Match.
than that, you know,
Yeah,
it's
definitely
okay.
understandable, and these things do happen for sure. One thing I do want to touch on, which is something that you said, is I think this is a big decision I think that a lot of coaches have to make as far as bringing sets, whether they want to bring sets that are more predictable yet proven effective, or whether they want to bring sets that are maybe a little more experimental but could catch your opponent off guard. And I think that's something that a lot of coaches struggle with in draft league, because it's like I think everybody kind of has their go-to sets for their Pokemon, right? Like you have like, okay, I've used these sets a lot on these Pokemon, I know they work generally, and of course, you're going to tweak them to adjust to your opponent's team in a draft match every week. But at the same time, sometimes you're thinking, oh, well, maybe I could use this set that's kind of off the wall and I could really catch them off guard with it. Um, so yeah, that's always, I think, a struggle in draft games is trying to find a good balance between originality and creativity versus power and kind of what to work. Um, but yeah,
And and finding that balance and trying not to go against your first mind, because there's so many games where I've had like, man, I changed this move at the last minute if I would just would have kept it.
going against your gut
And
instinct
even
is often a bad thing. Yes, I agree for sure.
even though I wasn't too proud with what I brought, because it was a little predictable.
Yeah,
but I didn't go against my gut. I have it here for a reason, and honestly, it paid off.
Yeah, I
I
was gonna
think if she
say.
bought a different set,
Yeah,
she could have won.
yeah, when you get results, my saying that I have is that you can't argue with results. So if you're getting results, that's that is a good thing. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think there were something that led to the end of this game being what it was. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there were some hacks, I believe, earlier in the match that kind of led to the situation being what it was. But at the end of the day, like I said, I think you can't argue with results, and if you're getting the results, you got to be doing something right. I think. But um,
Yeah, I, I did notice I did crit her Incineroar with flip turn, and I wasn't running any attack, so I'm not sure does that kill. It is torrent boosted, but it's a flip turn, so you know what I mean.
yeah, fair enough. So,
It was just yeah,
but yeah, hey, it is what it is at the end of the day. So, but moving
right.
along from that game, that is going to bring us to the matchup of Cobra and the two cool Typhlosions taking on Lazy Boy and the Sleepy Laxingtons. So, looking at these teams on paper, on Cobra's side, you've got stuff like the Roaring Moon, the Goldango, the Galarian Wheezing. Um, Pretty solid stuff. Also, the Terra Captains, the Dunsparce, and the Hisuian Typhlosion, of course. And then he's also got, stuff like the Tentacruel, which is nice utility, and the Iron Hands, powerhouse in its own right. Versus on Lazy Boy's side, he's got stuff like the Darkrai, the Quaquaval, the Pecharunt. Very solid stuff as well as the Jirachi. Ursaluna Blood Moon, of course, can never be slept on. Very, very dangerous Pokemon. And then he's changed things up a little bit. He's got Terra Captain's Pyroar and Mousehold, which are pretty solid. And then the Noivern, very fast, and the Screamtail, very good utility. So, um, looking at this matchup on paper, I do feel kind of like this is a pretty even match on paper. I feel like the top offensive threats on each team kind of match pretty well against each other because it's like, um, you know, Darkrai kind of takes out Goldango, but then Roaring Moon kind of takes out Pecharunt. Quaquaval takes out Roaring Moon. Galarian Weezing takes out Darkrai. So on and so forth. So this does feel like a pretty even matchup on paper to me, but what do you think about it, Chris?
Um, I actually gave the edge to Cobra a tiny bit because I thought Roaring Moon was crazy because after a booster speed, like it can acrobatics quack after a +1,
All
and then
right.
outspeed it. Petrarch really can't switch in to like knockoff or earthquake, and
Of
Jirachi
course.
same thing, right?
Yeah.
And then Ursa Luna is pretty solid. I think that was a very good bring. I just think with the combination of Dunsparce and Tentacruel, it could be tough. And AV hands, as long as it's healthy, I want to say it can take on Ursaluna.
Yeah.
But other than that, I thought this matchup was interesting. I thought both teams had. Oh yeah, I felt like Tentacruel was a very solid answer to Noivern and Pyroar.
Yep. Fair enough. So, looking at the actual match result here, we are going to see that it was Cobra who did in fact take the win in this match 2-0. Um, we did get to see this game because we got an upload from Lazy Boy, who typically doesn't upload his games, I don't think, but we did get an upload from him, so we got to see the game. Because I was kind of thinking this was a game we weren't going to get to see, but yeah, we did get to see it. So, looking at the game, I will say I think one of the things that jumped out to me is I think there were some interesting sets on both sides here. I thought both coaches were pretty creative, but at the same time brought some pretty good sets to battle. I definitely feel like Cobra played this match better than Lazy Boy did because I just feel like there were a lot of moments in the game where Lazy Boy either mispredicted or he over predicted, or I think Cobra was definitely on his game more so than Lazy Boy was for this one. But I also thought that the Terra Fire Hisuian Typhlosion put a lot of work in because that thing just spammed eruptions and did a lot of damage to Lazy Boy's team. But what did you think of this matchup?
You absolutely hit the nail right on the head, right? And then I thought Cobra did play the match a lot better. Lazy made some very questionable and wild plays,
Yep.
because I seen he had there was a turn where there was Ursa Luna. He had flip turned into the there was a couple turns. So there was one turn was it was he had switched Noivern into an ice punch. I think Ursa Luna had like literally a hit left, and he could have just sacked it or went into
Yep.
Scream Tail to kind of see. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Maybe Scream Tail was a switch there. So he just goes hard Noivern,
Yep.
just loses it right off the bat, and
Yeah,
I'm
that
like, dang.
that was devastating right there. Absolutely, I remember that one.
And then there was another play where he had Quack in front of Weezing or whatever, right? He flip turns and Weezing comes out, and then he goes into he goes into the Ursulina. It just dies with a strange thing.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah, there was
oh.
definitely some reckless and questionable plays on his side for sure in that one. But yeah, I do to a point understand like you want to try to be unpredictable against your opponent. I get that. But at the same time, you go too far in that direction, and you're going to pay for it. And I think Lazy Boy definitely paid for it in this one. I think.
Because if you're not sure what a Pokemon does, right?
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do is sack one of your offensive guys. So just go into somebody a little less passive, someone who's not as important to the team. See what you're working with, see what you're dealing with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
then you know how to approach.
The situation. Yeah, never underestimate the value of scouting. I know a lot of the coaches that are higher up on the win column. I think they all do this. Is it's about being cautious, but you also need to know when the right moment is to strike. Right. So it's always a balance, and it's achieving that balance can definitely be difficult for sure. Timing is everything.
And yeah, Pokemon, it's literally, a lot of mental. You're making a lot of decisions quickly each turn, and just one bad one can really set you back.
Yes, absolutely agreed. So. But yeah, moving on from this game, that is going to bring us to the matchup of Silver and the Legends of Lapras taking on Stefan and the Grand Lake Garchomps. So this is the one game this week that we do not have a recording for, as neither of these coaches typically upload their matches. But nonetheless, we will still be talking about it to what extent we can. So looking at these teams on paper here, we can see on Silver's side, he's got obviously the Iron Valiant, the premier powerhouse that it is. He's got stuff like the Pheasantipede, the Hisuian Gudra, great defensively. He's got that mini Sun strategy with the Walking Wake and the Torkoal. Terra Captains Umbreon and Ambipom are pretty noteworthy, and then of course the Landorus Therian. Shout out to you boy Joey Fontaine. Had
Yeah.
had to do it. But then
Yeah.
on the other side, of course, with Stefan, he's got the Garchomp, the mascot, obviously. He's got the Hisuian Samurott, the Rillaboom, and the Hawlucha with that terrain unburdened combo, which I do know a little something about. Of course, he also has the Terra Captains Tauros and Diancie, and then he's got the Munkadori as well. So pretty solid stuff all around there. Um, Looking at this matchup on paper, I do feel like Stefan has a little bit of the advantage in this match, just because it feels like Garchomp is pretty good against the team. If it can, I mean, aside from getting outsped by the Valiant, but if it can be like Scarf Chomp, and you can get the Valiant to waste its booster, I feel like it could put in a lot of work. Um, I also felt like the hazards would be pretty good against Silver as well if he could get those up, because Stefan's team is kind of like hazard stack dot team essentially this season. So But yeah,
Absolutely.
so if he could get hazards up, and I think aside from the torque hole to rapid spin, I don't really think if I'm remember correctly, I guess he has the Serena that could also rapid spin, but Stefan has a pretty solid spin blocker in Skeledirge, so I feel like if he could get the hazards up and keep them up, those would be huge as well. But what did you think of this matchup on paper?
In this matchup, I kind of gave the edge to Silver because I really
Okay.
like the combination of Torkoal and Walking Wake offensively. It just looked like it is just like there's like no switch into like Hydro Steam.
Okay.
Maybe an AV Rillaboom could be a thing, maybe, right? And maybe
Yeah.
also maybe Terra Water Nancy is pretty cool too. Yeah, so maybe
AV
I'm
Munkadori,
over
maybe. You never know.
right.
AV
You know,
anything.
so
Just
right,
slap an
so
AV
I
on anything.
maybe
Yeah.
and honestly, like just doing that alone, you got instant bulk, right? Like him on
Sure,
top,
sure.
for example,
Yeah.
50, 50 special 50 HP.
Yeah.
It seems like the bulkiest thing walking around.
Yes.
But I don't
Fair
know.
point though.
I like Silver's priority options. I thought Pheasant Dippity was a pretty good answer to Deancey. You know, I'm not
Yeah.
sure if Stefan is running Terra still on that thing,
Yeah. Yeah, he could
but if it's
potentially
not, I
be.
think
Yeah.
right, right. So yeah, but
Fair enough.
either way, it was gonna come down to who prepped best here, as it usually does, right?
Yes, absolutely. Prepping is key for sure. So, but yeah, as we look at the match results here, we will see that it was in fact Stefan that did win this matchup 2-0. Like I said, no recording, so we don't really know much about this game. The one thing I can tell from the stats, and they were chatting about it just a bit afterward, is the fact that it seemed like Power Herb Diancie went absolutely nuts in this game, took out more than half of Silver's team, I believe, with the Power Herb. I think it was Terra. Um, Power Herb, and I don't know what the Terra was, but Power Herb Diancie was what it was with the, of course, we all know the Meteor Beam Power Herb combo, raising your special attack, and then obviously it doesn't have to charge thanks to the Power Herb. You fire off that really powerful special rock attack and then get that boost. And
Right.
Diancie's an absolute tank, so getting it set up like that's definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with. So I don't know if you have any more information about this game, but that was the big takeaway that I saw from this game, is that it seemed like Diancie really wrecked shop in this one.
I mean, that's pretty cool. You know, I would have never thought of a Power Herb Deancey. It sounds like Stefan was really cooking with that set, you
Yeah,
know, because that's probably not the set I would have brought. But hey, if it works, it works.
yeah. At the end of the day, you got to do what works. That's what I always say. So, um,
Right. And, you know, every coach has their own way of approaching each game, and there's no wrong way to really play, you know?
well, I don't know if I go that far, but I definitely I appreciate what you're saying though. But yeah, there's definitely wrong things you can do, but I think it's always
Most definitely.
finding the balance of creativity and goodness, you know. But
Right, because there's some unorthodox things that just, you know, like, you know, I wouldn't run, but I see other coaches run. I'm like, dang, that really worked.
yeah, well, it's all
So,
about picking the right set for the right game, I guess. So, it definitely this one seemed to work out well in this game, but um, but yeah.
absolutely.
So moving over to our next game, that is going to bring us to the matchup of Rolder and the Down Under Crocodiles taking on Brandon and the Piedmont Triad Kickers. So, on this one here on paper, you can see on a Rolder's team, pretty solid Rain team. He has Rain Core on this one with, of course, the Raging Bolt, Pelipper, Manaphy, and then, of course, the Basculegion and the Overquill, both swift swimmers, and the Overquill being one of his Terror Captains is pretty solid. He's also got Terror Captain Hitmonchan to balance that out. He's got Clodsire for defense, Rabombi for utility. Pretty solid stuff there. On Brandon's side, he's got Stuff like the Urshifu Rapid Strike and the Cinderace, just a lot of power. He's got the absolute tank of the Archaludon. He's got Terra Captains, Whimsicott, Flygon, pretty solid Terra Captains in their own right, absolutely. The Thundurus is a great prankster user. Forretress, great utility as well. So yeah, when I look at this matchup on paper, I do feel like Brandon actually has the matchup on paper, and I say that because the Rain Core does not seem very potent into Brandon's team. Outside of the Cinderace, which obviously is going to be changing its type every turn with Libero, um, there's a lot of stuff on Brandon's team that is not only not affected by the rain, but actually benefits from the rain. So you've got Urshifu Rapid Strike, which is part water, obviously. You've got Archaludon with that Electro Shot, or yeah, I think it's Electro Shot, that move that it doesn't have to charge. It's basically Meteor Beam, which you get the special attack increase, and then you 2-turn attack. But if the rain is up, it doesn't have to charge. You've got the Thundurus, which obviously gets those perfect accuracy thunders and whatnot. So it really does seem like the rain actually kind of helps Brandon's team. So for that reason, I think Brandon definitely has the edge in this one. But what do you think about it, Chris?
I absolutely agree. I definitely gave Brandon the edge here in this week's matchup. I felt like there was a ton of rain abusers on Brandon's side, like the Urshifu, the Archaludon, the Thundurus,
Yep.
Pikachu even.
Which Brandon's stubborn. He's going to bring that dang Pikachu, which I'll get to in a second. But um,
Right. This is like his like I want to say he's had Pikachu every season.
I think might have been one that he didn't, but yeah, no. For the most part, he's had like Cinderace. For some reason, Cinderace and Pikachu, man, that guy is married to those Pokemon for some reason. So, but I give him all the credit in the world for sticking to his convictions. I give it to him. I do. But
He
um,
wouldn't be the Tri Kickers without either one.
exactly. So, but yeah, when we look at the match results for this game, we will see that it was in fact Brandon winning this match 2-0, snapping his perfect season. Unfortunately, Brandon was the only coach prior to this week that had a perfect season, and he broke the streak. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, you be the judge, ladies and gentlemen. But it happened, and it is what it is. Um, so, but I will say this was it actually wasn't for the reasons that you would think, which we're going to get into. So that this game went down the way it did. So um, I thought that this game was actually a very close, very competitive game, first and foremost. I think that both coaches prepared pretty well. I know on Rolder's side, he actually opted to not bring the Rain Core just due to the fact that he realized that it could be used against him. So I give him credit for that. Um, I thought that both coaches on Brandon's side, I thought that he prepped pretty well for for Rolder as well. So I give it to both of them. And the game was pretty hard fought, pretty hotly contested, pretty even match through and through. Um, two deciding factors, one little one and one big one here. As I will say, number one, as I had alluded to before, Brandon and his dang Pikachu. Like he keeps bringing the dang Pikachu, and then it keeps getting one shot when he brings it, and I'm just like, why? Every time I watch his game when Pikachu's there, I'm just like, why, Brandon? Like, why do you insist on putting yourself in 6v5 games? Like, I don't understand. Like, why? You got others, you got perfectly good Pokemon that have actual decent stats sitting on your roster, and you keep bringing this Pikachu. And I get it's a Terra Captain. I get you like it. I get it. I really get it. And if you're just trying to have fun, that's cool. But we're here to objectively criticize your funness. So, with that in mind, Pikachu, I
Right.
think, continues to set Brandon back every time he brings it for the most part. But the big, big, big story in this match, in my opinion, is the Rolder choke. So, right at the very end of this game, we are in a situation where Rolder is down to Hitmonchan, I believe, and Brandon is down to Forretress and Whimsicott. And so the current situation is Hitmonchan in versus versus Forretress. I believe the Forretress is chipped a little bit, and the Hitmonchan is not, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's at about full. So what Rolder does, which costs him the game, is he opts to go Terra on the Hitmonchan, and he goes Terra Steel um, in the face of a Forretress for some reason that I'm not quite sure about, and he ends up uh, hitting Forretress and then with a Drain Punch, which is all well and good, but then takes an incoming Earthquake, which is actually now a two-shot because he's Terra'd Steel on the Hitmonchan. So I think that was a huge tactical error on Rolder's part because I feel like you could say maybe he was thinking there would be like a heavy slam or something coming from the Forretress possibly, although typically they never run that. Um, but I think it definitely would have been way smarter for Rolder to see um, what move Brandon was going to go for before he terra'd, because in doing so, like I said, it like say for hypothetically, if Rolder had not terra'd the Hitmonchan, Earthquake would not have been a two shot on the Hitmonchan, and Hitmonchan could have, with its drain punches, outlasted Forretress, and then Whimsicott was so chipped, I believe, that the bullet punch was a guaranteed KO. So really, the game was Rolder's at that point in the match, and he kind of threw it away by going Terra Steel on the Hitmonchan. So yeah, that's my biggest takeaway is kind of the choke by Rolder, unfortunately. But what say you, Chris?
Uh, Absolutely. I thought up to that point the game was pretty even match, right? I thought there was a point where Brandon thought he was gonna lose to Meloetta, but Brandon made a very good play, a risky play, going for the encore. And now everybody knows Meloetta has Serene Grace, and you risk getting put to sleep with Relic Song.
Yes,
So the fact that didn't happen, very very lucky.
nothing short of a miracle, but go on. Yes.
Right. There was another play. Roller left his Raging Bolt in on a on Whimsicott, and yeah, you heavy slam, but that moon has O code and critted you,
Yep.
so the trade off there wasn't really worth it.
Yeah.
And I thought Roller had some pretty cool sets though with the counter Clodsire catching the Cinderace. It's very very cool. That's probably
Absolutely.
something I would have never thought about.
Yep. Absolutely.
Um, and I think if Roller maybe could have squeezed Fire Punch on Hitmonchan, just find a way to squeeze Fire Punch on it, you could have just avoided all that and just you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Absolutely. That's a hindsight, but I get you there 100%. Yeah, and Rolder, I take nothing away from Rolder's early to mid game because, like you said, he definitely did make some really good plays, and then he made a couple like not the best plays. He did get haxed a little bit, with that, and then I guess you could say there were some hacks on Brandon's side with Archaludon not getting put to sleep with Relic Song, um, but yeah, like I said, even despite all those things, at when it boiled, like I said, that's the thing that sticks with me is that when it boiled right down to the end of the game, Fire Punch or not, hacks or not, good plays or not, like I said, it seemed like Rolder had it in the bag. It's funny because as I was watching this game, I already knew the match result before I watched the game, right? And as I was watching the game, I was thinking like Brandon won, but I'm like, how is Rolder gonna lose this? Like for most of the game, I'm just watching it. I'm like, Rolder's in control. Like how is he gonna lose? Like I don't understand. And I didn't read the comments or anything. If they talked about it in the comics, I didn't know exactly what happened. So, but I was watching the game thinking like, how is this gonna play out that Rolder loses? And then I see it when I saw the Terra and he was Steel. I was like, no,
Yeah.
but Terra Steel right into the Earthquake, and I was like, oh my god, no. I guess that's it. So yeah, I mean, but you know what? It happens. These things do happen, but I guess all you can do is kind of hopefully learn from it and moving forward. I guess would be all I could say.
Right,
But
and I know all about throwing away games because I had a misplay week 2 where
well,
I was
yep,
playing Al, and I don't know what came over me, but the play I made wasn't the right play,
yeah,
and yeah, and then Al had a similar situation with you in his game with
Yep.
I think it was Tusk. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah, and I just
Because
did it myself. Like I said, that's why I was saying when we were talking about my game, because I just did it to myself in my game this week that we talked about, and I was like, that's why I kept saying over and over that I'm just thankful that those mistakes that I make didn't actually cost me the win. So, you know, um,
and then every time when Brandon brings Pikachu, I'm always like, is this the game he's gonna do something? Are we gonna see Pikachu in the
and then the answer
thumbnail?
is
You
always
know what
no. And then the answer is always no. Is this finally the game Pikachu pops off? And then the answer is always no. Sorry, Brandon. I'm sorry I had to, but
I
no.
mean?
As far as the plays go, it happens to all of us. We all, nobody plays perfectly all the time, and it is what it is for sure. But
You
um,
just gotta forgive yourself and
move on.
move on and definitely try to approach the next game
Try
a
to
little
do better
better,
next
play
time.
things a little tighter.
Yes, try to do better
Right,
next time.
absolutely.
But speaking of moving on, that is going to bring us to our next game, which is in fact going to be the matchup of Scorpion and the Leaf Agents taking on Emerald Miner slash Heal Emerald and the Demolition Force. So, looking at this matchup on paper, on Scorpion side, of course, you've got the absolute power of the Palafin. You've got the bulky offense with the Zapdos and the Ting-Lu, hazard stacking as well with the Ting-Lu. The great utility with the Cyclizar, the power of the Ogerpon Cornerstone, Terra Captains, Delphox, and Primeape, very well placed, obviously. And then, of course, the utility of the Klefki and the Mimikyu is always an X factor with the decoy. Versus on Emerald's side, you've got the Greninja, the Annihilate, the Metagross, great bulky offense and slash just quick offense. You've got the Enamorus, which is more quick offense. You've got the Tarot Captains, Cryogonal, Lycanroc, Zangoose, pretty well placed there. Nice utility and then power as well. And then, of course, the bulk of the Moltres and the Dragalge, and can't forget about the Sandy Shocks either. So, but yeah, when I look at this matchup on paper, I do feel like Scorpion has the advantage in this match, just because I feel like there's not a lot on Emerald's team that really stands up to Palafin very well, outside of, like, I guess Metagross if it's defensive, like a defensive Terra on one of his Terra captains that would resist Palafin. Annihilate maybe if it's like the bulk up variant, but I feel like Palafin does work to his team. I feel like Zapdos could also do work to the team. So, so yeah, I do think it's not a runaway, but I think that Scorpion definitely has a little bit of the edge on paper here. Um, but what do you think? I also think I guess speed's pretty even, but what do you think about it?
I absolutely agree. I thought Scorpion had the matchup on paper. I felt like it would be fairly tough for Emerald to kind of break through the combination of like Tinglu and Zapdos
Yep.
because they just go really hard into Emerald's team.
Yep.
Um, Other than that, I think Emerald Miner has the best spin blocker outside of Golden Go. So if he could get the hazards up in this game, he has a better chance of winning.
Yep. Definitely.
But it's not going to be easy.
Yes, because we have to remember that Scorpion's team is one of those that only has a spinner. There's a few teams that only have spinners, a few that only have defoggers, and some that have both, obviously. But Scorpions is one of those that only has a spinner. So if you have a solid spin blocker like Annihilate, for example, which is a really high uh, level premier spin blocker, that could be definitely be a good thing. But um, and we also know, obviously, Emerald being the king of the hazards, he always tries to prioritize hazards. So, um, but yeah, looking at the actual match results here, we will see that it was in fact Scorpion that did win this match 4-0, pretty sizable win for Scorpion. Um, Looking at this matchup, I will say that top to bottom, I do feel like Scorpion played this game better than Emerald did. I feel like there were quite a few situations in the game where Emerald didn't quite seem like he was fully on his game for one reason or another. And I think there's one big reason for that, which I'll get to in a second. But I think Emerald definitely made a couple of questionable plays in this one, some bad reads. And also, I think there was one that sticks out to me particularly is there was a moment where I feel like he had Cryogonal that had Terra watered in the face of a Palafin, in versus the Palafin, and so I think it would have been best for him in that situation um, to go ahead and let the Cryogonal go down to a Palafin attack, but he actually switches into Moltres instead, and then Moltres gets two shot by Palafin. So I think that now I will say in his defense, because that was pretty much what sealed the game in Scorpion's favor. Now I will say in Emerald's defense, I don't know that he was packing anything on the Moltres that would have mattered, because like the big difference in that moment was that Moltres, if he would have done it that way, Moltres would have at least gotten an attack off on Palafin versus not getting an attack off on it before it died, which could have made a difference. Although I don't know that Moltres really had a ton to hit Palafin with. Um, but yeah, I do think stuff like that. That was just the best example I could think of. But there were plays like that were not very optimal that Emerald play made. And I think the biggest reason for that, which is my second point that I want to make, is once again those hacks, man. Those there were some brutal hacks in this game against Emerald in Scorpion's favor. The big one was early in the game where I can't remember what it was, what attack it was, but I know Metagross took an incoming attack from something, I can't remember what, and got crit in one shot and died. And that was, I forget if it was like a knockoff from Cyclizar or something. I don't remember what it was. But it took an attack and died off a crit, which was huge because Emerald was really counting on Metagross in this game as like a Palafin check, um, and didn't live long enough to do anything about it. And that was a big moment. And then there was another big moment actually. A little, and I think that, well, circling back to my original point, I think that was what kind of threw Emerald off his game, because I think after that crit, Metagross went down to that crit, he was just kind of off his game from that point, which does happen to the best of us. I think if you're playing a game and you're focused and everything's going, you know, one way and you're thinking about it, and then all of a sudden you lose like a big player to a crit or a hack or something like that, it kind of really throws your head off. You know, it gets in your head, you know what I mean, and it just kind of throws your decision making capabilities for the rest of the game. And I think that's definitely what happened to Emerald in this match. But later on, there was also a really critical Will-O-Wisp miss on the Palafin from the Moltres that actually would have been huge, because if Palafin would have been burned, it couldn't have gone wild, which it kind of did. Palafin pretty much went nuts and cleaned the game up, took out like half or more of the team at the end. So definitely some hacks and some suboptimal plays on Emerald's side, I think. But what do you think?
Absolutely. I think there was a play. I mean, after the Ogrepon created Metagross,
Oh,
it
it was
was
Ogerpon. That's what it
definitely
was.
yeah, he like knocked off, and then after that, I knew Emerald kind of wasn't in the right headspace because it just kind of got worse from there because there was a play where he had a Zapdos in front of Annihilate, and I thought he could have saved it a little longer for Ting Lu, and then maybe went Cryogonal.
But he went down to a hurricane. Yeah, that was another one of those plays that I feel like it would have been worth it to try and save Annihilate for later, because it seemed pretty valuable.
Absolutely, because I thought once Annihilate went down, I thought Ting Lu became a lot more of an issue
Yeah.
because it's just so bulky, and then um, Annihilate, depending on the set, couple bulk ups or whatever, could probably take on Ting Lu pretty solid. But after he lost Metagross, he immediately lost Annihilate after, which didn't help him very much.
No, yeah, his two of his best counters to Scorpion's premier Pokemon definitely gone there.
And then you combine that with like the Will-O-Wisp miss and a lot of those other things that were just not going his way and not getting the flame body emulsion. It was just a very uphill match from the first turn.
Yes. Yep, absolutely, I agree. And when you're in those situations, when it's an uphill game against the coach, the caliber of Scorpion, with the team as strong as he has, then there's really no room for error in those situations when you're playing coaches like that have teams that are strong. It's really no room for error in those situations. So, um,
And score past every last EV calculated, and
yes,
but in Emerald defense, when you are building your team and you have like, oh, this is gonna be my check, right, and then
yeah,
immediately it just gets credit and you lose it, you kind of in a position where you're trying to figure out what to do about the rest of the team because your main check to a certain amount is gone.
yes, exactly. Yeah, it forces you to think on the fly, and sometimes you don't have the either the ability to do so, or sometimes you don't have the pieces there to be able to adjust. But yeah, that is the way the game goes sometimes. So, um,
Yes, yes.
but yeah, moving on from that one, that is going to bring us to our final match of the week here, and that is going to be the matchup of Raymond and the Mamoswine Doubters taking on Biridu and the Atacama Tyrannotars. So, looking at this matchup on paper, um, obviously on Ray's side, you see stuff like the Latios, you see the Ogerpon base form, you see the Terrapagos, bulky offense, obviously. Tinkaton adds that as well, and the Mamoswine. The Tornadus Therian is also nice, and then Terra Captain's Lantern and Blaziken are pretty potent as well. Then, of course, on Biridu's side, you've got the Iron Treads, you've got the Chi Yu, you've got the Ogerpon Wellspring. So another battle of the Ogerpons here. Um, You've got the Salamence, just a lot of power on Biridu's team. The Azumarill as well with the huge power. Speaking of power, you've got the Kilowattrel and Muck Terra Captains that are very solid, and then the Uxie is great utility as well. So um, when I look at this matchup on paper, I feel like it's pretty evenly matched once again. Honestly, I feel like the certain threats, from Ray's team seem to match up well against certain threats for Biridu's team, and vice versa. So, looking at these rosters top to bottom, I do feel like this is a really even matchup on paper. But what do you think about it, Chris?
I thought it was a very even matchup on paper. I thought Beer would have a little bit of a hard time switching into ice and ground with
Yeah,
Mamoswine because it does hit a good portion of the team, like the Iron Treads, the Salamence, the Kilowattrel. Mud gets hit by Earthquake,
right.
and so I thought Mamoswine was very very solid here.
Yeah,
Other than that, the double ogre pawns, I thought the match outside of that was pretty even. Maybe Bira has a slight speed advantage, with the Kilowattra, but Ray does have a lantern over there, so
yeah. Which kind of
yeah, you
which
know.
kind of shuts it down. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, all in all, pretty even game, I think, on paper. So but yeah, when we take a look at what actually happened in the match, we will see that it was in fact Ray that did win this match 1-0. Um, this was a great match, honestly. I watched it through and through, and this was really a great match. This was a well played, hard fought match on both sides. Um, Really not much of any error that I could think of on either side. But yeah, this was like top to bottom. This was just a really great match, I will say. A couple of things that stick out to me here is that obviously on Ray's side, the Ogerpon and the Latios pretty much did all the heavy lifting. I think combined they each took out half the team. I want to say on Biridu's side, and I think it was Scarf Latios, I think, if I'm not mistaken, to speed creep everything on Biridu's team, which was smart. Um, but yeah, Ogerpon put in a lot of work too as well on Ray's side, and they really just both put a lot of work into Biridu's team. But the one of the biggest takeaways here, and I know Beardo, I know you're watching this. I know you're going to be happy to hear me say this because today, mark this day on your calendar. Today is the day that I give Misdrevious its dues. I do because the Misdrevious set that Beardo brought to this game was beautiful. I have to say it was absolutely
Fire.
beautiful, and it worked to perfection in this game. Like I was blown away by how good and effective this Misdrevious was in this game against a player like Ray of no less. Like the player who is widely considered by most, if not all, the people in this league as the measuring stick for what it is to be a good player here in the BHDL. The fact that he brought this Misdrevious set into this game and that he was able to catch the Terrapagos, which was choice, and he mean looked it in of all things, he mean looked it into the field so it couldn't escape, and he was able to calm mind as much as he wanted. And it was just it was crazy, it was amazing, it was crazy. I was watching it going like, and then because this is another match that I knew the results before I actually watched the game. And when I was watching the game and I saw that happen, like my head exploded. I was like, I can't believe that he just pulled this off. And like I said, against Ray, no less, of all the players against Ray. So I am being 100% sincere when I say, Beardo, my hat's off to you. You did it with the Misdrevious. You absolutely made it happen, and I give you all the credit in the world for that. So,
Honestly, absolutely, because I probably would have never pulled that type of mischievous set off. That is very Ray esque, and Bira did it in true perfection, trapping the Terrapagos. Like, there's not many things that would have the courage to trap a Terrapagos.
yes, yeah, and it just so
But that
happened to be
mischievous,
choice. And it just so happened to be Choice locked into Stealth Rock, and he's just sitting there going for Stealth Rock like 10 turns in a row. It's just like
I'm
this
like,
is
what
the
is this Terrapagos doing?
this is the damnedest thing I've
It hit
ever seen in my in all. This is the damnedest thing I've ever seen. I was watching it and I was just like, and then in the back of my head I'm just thinking, Beardo does this and then he loses after doing this, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is the craziest matchup ever. But yeah, I do think one thing that Beardo did say during the game or after the fact is that he did kind of make a mistake because he didn't actually even know that Mean Look is permanent. Like Mean Look doesn't run out. Like
right, right.
unlike other trapping moves like Encore and stuff, Mean Look never runs out. So he only calm minded to +3 special attack, special defense. Hypothetically, he could have calm minded to +6 special attack, special defense, and there was nothing that that Terrapagos could do about it. Now, I will say, if it makes him feel any better in his defense, um, it wouldn't have really mattered too much, I don't think, because Ogerpon still comes in and gets rid of Misdrevious anyway. I think, although it may have, because I think, although maybe it would have made a difference, because I don't know that Ogerpon, I mean, I guess we would have to run some calcs, which I'm not going to do, um, you know,
Right,
but
right.
I think Ogerpon lived a hit from the +3 Misdrevious, and maybe it wouldn't have lived a hit from the +6 Misdrevious. So maybe going up to +6 would have actually made the game tip in Beardu's favor. I don't know, but I do feel it. But Ogerpon still, regardless, if it wouldn't have been one shot by Misdrevious, would have got rid of it on the physical side. Um, but even so, like like that's just an interaction that, like, I guess in a way I don't blame Beardo for not knowing that, but in another way I was thinking, like, come on, like, you're running the damn move, so you should know what it does, you know. so so but no, it was just the damnedest thing I've ever seen. So but yeah, I thought hats off, to both players for an incredible game. Yeah, let's
Yes, absolutely. Hats off to Ray. Season
for
after
surviving
season,
that,
he
for getting through all that and still winning at the end of the game. Like that's this,
right
yeah, just crazy.
because Ray. I thought Beerus hazards were and the combination of like mischievous, would kind of shift the match into Beerus' favor because I thought the hazard being up was a very solid way to approach the game.
Yep.
And just a shout out to Ray for being in the top consistently season after season. I don't know how he does it, but he makes it look like it's the easiest thing to do.
Well, he does. He makes it look easy sometimes, and yeah. So I think the thing is, like, these are, I think one of the reasons this was such a good match and such a close match is that these are two of the most consistent coaches in the BHDL historically. These are actually only two of only three coaches who've actually been in the playoffs all three seasons of BHDL to this point. So obviously Ray, former two-time champion, we all know how good he is. Can't take anything away from him. Biradu, like I said, he's been in the playoffs all three times, so very, very consistent coach. Um, but yeah, just a great match, and like I said, I just have to say my hats off for the Mischievous in this match. And I will, as a final note, I will add that given what I just said, it makes it all the more bitter that after all of that, after the Mischievous did all of that for you, what did you do, Biradu? What did you do? You took out your knife and you stuck it in Mischievous's back. You transacted it away. You transacted it away. How could you? How could you do that after everything Mischievous just did for you in this game? How could you just transact it away? Like, my head exploded when I saw that. I was like, you, oh my god, I just can't even. I can't even. I can't even. So
Like when I saw Mischievous pulling off the shenanigans, I was like, no way is this Mischievous about to win the game? But you know, like I said, if Mischievous got to +6, I wonder if
if it
the
could have pulled
outcome
it
would have
off.
changed.
Yeah, it could have.
I
I mean, we
wonder.
don't know. Yeah, but there's a chance it could have if he would have gone to +6. We'll never know. But yeah, my final thought is simply how could you, Biradu, after everything Mischievous did for you, to take your knife out and stick it square in the back of Mischievous and transact it away. I can't even. Despicable, absolutely despicable. That's all I can say. You should be ashamed of yourself,
He
sir.
owes Mischievous
You should be
a dinner
ashamed. You
and
should
a
be
movie.
ashamed of yourself, sir. That's all, and that's all I'm gonna say about this matchup. But yeah, that wraps up the matches for this week, and that is going to go ahead and now feed us into a look at the updated standings here in the BHDL for post week 6. And so here we go. Here are the updated standings on the screen right now. Not a ton of movement from last week, as you guys can see. We did have a couple of the coaches that were up top take losses this week, so a little bit of a shift as well. There were a couple of coaches down lower that actually got some wins this week that shifted them up. So, but all in all, not a ton of movement here. But if we look at the current standings, we see we now effectively have a four-way tie for first place with four coaches. That would include Scorpion, the man on the call with me now, Pokemaster88, Raymond, and myself, all with that 5-1 record. Relatively respectable differentials to ranging to very, very high differentials. All these coaches, the 5-1s, in a prime position to make it to playoffs at this point. Followed very closely by two more coaches, Biradu and Abomination, sitting at that 4-2 record. Very strong differentials for them as well. Very, very solid shot of getting into playoffs as well. And then following them directly, we got the middle of the pack, including Emerald Miner and Cobra, both clocking in at 3-3 records, breaking even with a right around a zero differential as well. And then we get to really the interesting part of the rankings as they sit, because we then have six coaches immediately under those two, six coaches with a 2-4 record with varying differentials. Very, very interesting there, as those coaches are going to be fighting for their lives to try and make a playoff spot. And then finally, toward the bottom at the end, we have well, I guess the six coaches I should list off with that 2-4 record: the Lazy Boy Rolder, Arcane Niner, Silver, Stefan, and HIM. And then at the bottom of the list currently, we have our 1-5 coaches. That would be Brandon and Anna. So basically, at this point, As you can see, we're in a situation where um, every coach with every different record has to do slash hope for something different going into the final 3 weeks of the league here. So for your top four coaches on this list, it's pretty simple actually. If you win one more match, you're going to be in playoffs guaranteed. But even if you lose, based on the way the math has worked out in this league thus far, even if these coaches lose out at this point, they still have a pretty solid shot of making playoffs, depending on how close those games are. Because the math that I've kind of worked out here is that 6-3 record or better is going to be a guaranteed playoff spot. 5-4 record is a really good shot of making playoffs, and then potentially with how the numbers shake out, potentially even a 4-5 record could make playoffs depending on what happens here. So pretty exciting. But yeah, for those four coaches, they just have to win either one more game or just not lose by huge margins in their last games, and they'll make it. For Biridu and Abomination with the 4-2 record, similar situation, but they have a little bit less of a cushion. They really need to win at least one more game um, to get that playoff spot. Um,
Yes, absolutely.
yep. But then,
Um,
sorry.
I feel like like being in like those ninth, eighth, seventh positions. It's a real fight down there. Every game matters.
Yep.
It's really magnified when you're fighting for that last place because I know by experience last season I was right in that bottom pack of players fighting for that final spot. It's very, very crazy trying to edge out the other competitors who are gunning for that final position.
Yep. Absolutely.
But hats off to Cobra. The last like 2, 3 weeks, maybe, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's been
So
climbing. Yes, the rising star, as it were, even though he doesn't like to hear it, but he's going to hear it anyway. So, um, but yeah, I agree with you
uh,
100%. That's where the real intrigue in the league at this point lies within the coaches in the players 7 through 14, which is like half the damn roster. Which makes things very interesting because um, while Emerald Miner and Cobra definitely have the edge, like they are one game up on the rest of those coaches. They are holding those spots right now. It only takes like another loss or so. And those two playoff spots could be very much within range because neither Emerald nor Cobra really have. I mean, Cobra is a little bit of a negative, Emerald Miner's a little bit of a positive, but they don't have massive differentials, which means that it's not going to take but like a couple of weeks for those spots to go away to go to someone else. And it is an absolute war. Like you said, I agree with you. It's going to be an absolute war for those last two spots because you could say the top six for the most part. You could say, barring some massive U-turn, pun intended. Those
right.
those top six coaches will probably see playoffs. And then, unfortunately, if we go down to the other end of the spectrum with the two coaches at the bottom, there's just about no way, unfortunately, for them that they can make playoffs. Although I will say they are not technically mathematically eliminated yet. But in order for like the Brandon or the Anastasia to actually make playoffs at this point, they would need not only would they need to win out at this point, they would have to win massively, and they would also have to hope and pray for the downfall of pretty much everyone in between them and those 7 and 8 spots to make it. But the real intrigue, like I said, at this point is the coaches in 7 through 14 right now because all the coaches below Emerald and Cobra have to just really be praying for Emerald and Cobra to lose out at this point. Because if they drop off even just a little bit at this point, if they even drop one more game than the coaches below them, this is going to get very interesting. And any of those coaches have a viable shot at making playoffs at this point. Um, so yeah, very very interesting situation around those spots.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like Cobra these last few weeks has been playing very, very well.
Yep,
He has been
he's been
um
up in his game absolutely.
coming up with some big wins. So shout out to Cobra for that. I would like to see Cobra and Lazy battle it out for that eighth spot. That'd be pretty cool to see.
Interesting. Fair enough. Yeah, I think there's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of intrigue, like I said, in those spots. So we're gonna keep an eye on that as these last few weeks. I'd say the next week is really going to be a critical week here. Week 7 is going to be a very critical week because that's really going to be like the breaking point for a lot of coaches. I think where one win could put them in like either a guaranteed playoff spot or a really really good position, and one loss could mean that it's all over. So next week is going to be a really really critical week, I think, but we'll definitely keep an eye on that moving forward. So,
Yes, absolutely. Some big games next week. Some big matchups.
yep,
A lot of coaches need to get some big W's.
yep, that's what it all boils down to. So, but yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, I think that'll pretty much do it for this one. So, yeah, that is all of your action for the BHDL4 Week 6 and the current standings. So, that'll do it for this one. Thanks for watching again, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed it. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, and/or subscribe if you did enjoy, and stay tuned for more new videos in the future. I would, of course, like to thank my guest, Chris, also known as Pokemaster88 from the Discord server, for joining me once again to discuss all of the big action here in Week 6 and, of course, the standings. So thank you for that.
Thank you, B-Nard, for having me. It's been a pleasure. I've had a fun time, shooting the shit about the this this week's games, and would be an honor to do it again.
Absolutely, yeah, it's been a good time. So, but yeah, thanks for coming on. And yeah, that'll do it. So that's it. And we'll see you next time.